Uh, Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming in this evening to the special meeting of council. We have just a couple of items on the agenda this evening that were both a little time sensitive and also things that we felt warranted a kind of deeper dive discussion related to the West Richmond Education Centre. So I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call of councillors.
Councillor Sean Sampson.
Present.
Deputy Warden Councillor Michael Digdon.
Present.
Deputy Warden Melanie Sampson.
Present.
And Warden Amanda Mumbercat.
Present.
Councillor Brent Sampson.
Present.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is a presentation from Upland. So I'll hand things over to Jason Green. Jason, welcome to our meeting this evening. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to hearing from you. So over to you.
And you can see that on your screen or projector now?
Yep.
And you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and start then. So thank you for having me join your council meeting this evening. My name is Jason and I work for a company called Upland Planning and Design. And I wanted to introduce you to the Richmond County Comprehensive Land Use Planning Project, which is part of the larger Eastern Nova planning project. So I'll just walk you through a quick agenda. So first we'll start with the planning system in Nova Scotia, and then go into the recent changes introduced by Bill 58, which is one of the reasons spurring this project along. We'll then get into reasons for land use planning and why do we do this thing called planning. I'll get into the Eastern Nova Scotia Regional Planning Project more broadly, get into our project team, the project timeline, and then depending on council's wishes, you can have questions and discussion and then go from there. So just to get quite technical off the start, I'm just looking at how do we plan in Nova Scotia. So we have this thing called the Municipal Government Act, and this is the legislation that enables land use planning within Nova Scotia. And within municipalities, we plan particularly through municipal planning strategies and land use bylaws. So if we think of the Municipal Government Act as kind of the toolbox, the municipal planning strategy is the blueprint. It's the vision and the goals and the policies. It's those statements of intent that council wishes to achieve. And the land use bylaw is the rules and regulations. These are the things you can do and you can't do. Importantly, the land use bylaw has to agree with the municipal planning strategy, and the municipal planning strategy has to agree with the Municipal Government Act. And like I said before, there's some key changes within the Municipal Government Act that are requiring planning across the province. And these are those minimum planning requirements that are highlighted in orange. So these were introduced through Bill 58. And just to get in particular, Bill 58 states that all land within a municipality must be subject to a municipal planning strategy and fulfill these minimum planning requirements. And these minimum planning requirements require policy developed for things like residential uses, commercial and industrial uses, institutional uses, and so on. So currently in Richmond County, the whole of the municipality isn't what we say is comprehensively planned. There are 7 MPS documents and 7 LUBs. So these cover places like Central Richmond, Illes Madame, Shannon Lake, Sporting Mountain, St. Peters, West Richmond, and there is a specific MPS document and LUB document for wind turbine development. But as you'll see in those areas in green, those areas aren't planned or aren't subject to comprehensive land use planning. So these are the kind of the areas that are the focus of this project. So getting into why we plan, and there's a quote we often like to use, and it's if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. And this comes down to the idea as if we don't plan our communities, someone else might do it for us. So getting into why we plan is we build a vision. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a technical vision or a a rigorous or comprehensive vision. It can be a vision of, we want this to remain a forest area, and we can do that through land use planning, as opposed to kind of, this shouldn't have been allowed here. And when planning's often wanted, sometimes it's often too late. Getting into why we plan is to use infrastructure efficiently. We did a site visit last week. We were throughout the municipality, and have been investment made in infrastructure like sewer, water, and sidewalks. Planning means we can help to use those services and the money that has been invested in that infrastructure efficiently. We also plan to support our community's character and culture. Again, throughout our site visits to the municipality, it's clear that there are common themes and common relationships between the land and the water and the land itself that really support the nature of life in Richmond, and planning can help to support that. We plan to prepare for change. So on the left there, we have a coastal area, and in Nova Scotia, climate change and sea level rise is kind of a fact of life that we're going to have to be dealing with over the next 10 to 50 to 100 years, and planning helps us do that. Another type of change is demographic change. So throughout Atlantic Canada, despite the growth that the province is seeing, and despite the growth that Atlantic Canada is seeing, we have an aging population, and planning can help us prepare for that by enabling certain types of uses. Or again, coming back to that infrastructure question is, where do we want types of uses throughout the municipality? We plan to set aside land for resource development. Again, through our site visits, it's clear that there are these built up kind of, we'll call them urban areas, but there's also areas where people use the land for their day-to-day lives, either aggregate development or forestry or fishing. These all have and contribute to the economy and people's way of life, and land use planning is a great tool to set aside land and preserve those uses within our community. And this is kind of coming back to the original idea of land use planning, is to separate incompatible uses. So when we think back to the factory town, when people lived and worked in the same location, it ended up not working. It created health concerns, and there were some significantly negative impacts on people's lives. So land use planning can help us separate uses that we don't necessarily want within our communities. We all eat chicken, or some of us eat chicken, but we don't necessarily want a large chicken barn neighboring our property. But to contrast that statement, we've recognized this in the profession, that we may have gone too far to the one side in separating uses, and we can bring some of these uses back together. Separating throughout land use planning, the idea has been to separate commercial, residential, and institutional and industrial uses, but there's an opportunity to kind of bring some of the uses back together, bringing residential and commercial in central areas, and also looking back to more of our agrarian roots, where urban farming and subsistence off the land is possible in, again, these urbane communities. So then getting into what is the Eastern Nova Scotia Regional Planning Project. So it is a comprehensive land use planning project for all of Cape Breton Island and Antigonish County. It is jointly funded by 7 municipalities. So this includes Cape Breton Regional Municipality, the towns of Port Hawkesbury and Antigonish, and then Victoria County, Antigonish County, Richmond County, and Inverness County. And like I said at the beginning, the focus of this project is on those unzoned areas to bring them up to those provincial standards. But there's also an opportunity to create a level of standards and commonalities between land use planning in participating municipalities. So the Richmond County is administered through the Eastern District Planning Commission. And if we're able to standardize the land use bylaws that they need to apply, that is really a huge win for us, and it'll be a win for the municipality and the planning commission in their ability to administer these documents. So the overall project goal is, like I said, that new municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw for the municipality of County of Richmond, Inverness, Victoria, and Antigonish. And this is just kind of getting into an example of that standardizing question. I think there's 12 in total between all the documents that the Eastern District Planning Commission administers. But just in Richmond, there's these 3 very different definitions for mobile and mini homes. And they can create challenges not only for the administrations of the documents, but people who use the documents every day. Someone who lives in central Richmond, but wants to build in West Richmond, they're dealing with 2 very different definitions for mini or mobile homes, despite functioning the same in different locations. So really part of this goal, or part of this project goal, is to enable people that aren't planning professionals or law professionals to be able to understand these documents and use them in their own house. And I don't know if they would read it casually, but trying to bring planning back to the community and make it more accessible to everyone. Just looking at our project team. So as I said, my name is Jason, and I work for a company called Upland. So the project will be managed by Stefan Kabler, who is our principal in charge, and the project manager will be Ian Watson. And what we've done is assigned a key planner to each of the 4 municipalities in the project. So I will be the lead planner for Richmond County. We have Nathan, who will be the planner for Victoria County, Paul, who will be the planner for Inverness County, and then we also have Ian, who will be the planner for Antigonish County. And our team is supported by our engagement manager, Ryan, and GIS support from Ingharad. And we've also brought on Strum Engineering, who will provide us kind of that engineering lens that we'll need as we're developing the land use bylaw. And of course, on the Eastern District side, we have John Bain, who's the Director of Planning, who will be kind of leading us throughout the project, as well as his staff and other municipal staff for each of the participating municipalities. Quickly get into the project timeline. So we began in September of 2021. And since that time, there've been kind of a lot of background work to begin with. So been planning the surveys and the mapping and the open houses that I'll speak about shortly. And then looking at some more engagement and background research to get into that document drafting from February to April of 2022. And then looking next spring, summer to get feedback on the draft municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. And looking at kind of what we're proposing in terms of plans and zonings and whether this works for the communities in the areas. And then next summer, fall, and winter, looking at those plan adoptions in the respective municipalities. Like I said, there was planned open houses for the second half of November. So this is happening the week of November 15th to 18th. And I'd just like to, if you can put this in your calendars, and if you'd like to attend one or all, I think it would be a great opportunity to speak to some residents and community members about planning. So we'll be doing 4 open houses throughout Richmond. And I believe Ayrshire was just confirmed late on Friday evening, so that is not tentative anymore. So we have one in Ayrshire at the Legion branch, in Dundee, in Lewisdale, and St. Peters. We have also created a website, and each project within the larger planning project has its own website. So Richmond's project website is www.planrichmond.ca. We've also established an email at hello@planrichmond.ca. So if you do receive any emails regarding land use planning or land use planning projects, you can forward those to us, or you can get that person to also email hello@planrichmond.ca. And that way we have these comments recorded, so that when we go to develop the drafts of the MPS, we have them on hand. And I'm not 100% sure if these are live at the moment. I believe they're still under development, but they should be launched pretty shortly here. That is my presentation. So I'll stop sharing now. So if there's any questions or comments from council, I can go ahead and answer those.
Can you hear people, Jason? Did you just hear the warden?
No, I didn't. I can try to lean in. Maybe.
You can hear me, Jason, right?
Yeah, I can hear you, Yvonne.
But you can't hear anybody else.
No, I can't hear in if they are speaking, unfortunately.
I think that's a good idea. Jason, if any,
Yeah.
what they're gonna do, the counselors, is they're gonna come over here in my spot and ask a question if they have one.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that works fine.
All right, perfect. Oh, right here? The button? Hey, Jason, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. I actually have a couple of pretty easy questions, I think.
Okay.
Some of the information on the open houses was shared on our Facebook site today, the Richmond County Facebook site. And so I actually have already gotten a question from a resident wondering, are there alternative methods for folks to be able to engage in these open houses that do not require physical attendance? Meaning, would the sessions be open with some technology, or would you also be hosting, or could you be hosting some open houses that would be virtual?
I'll have to get back. My understanding is that we'll be hosting at least one kind of virtual presentation that if anyone can't attend it, there will be an opportunity to participate in that virtually. So yes, I'd have to get back to Yvonne regarding if it'll be a Richmond specific or if it'll be a project broadly for the project. I don't know the answer to that question, but I can get back to you on that.
Sounds good. I think we would be appreciative if it would just be a Richmond specific, because I think we would definitely, especially in the time of the pandemic where people may not be comfortable to go out, we certainly want to make it as possible as we can for people to engage. If they're interested in participating, right, I think we want to encourage that as much as we can. So that was my first question. And the other question is, in terms of engaging with council, should we, I know that you encouraged us to attend the open houses, but is there also an opportunity in the planning process for us to specifically engage with you in terms of, our thoughts on this project?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, we will be in Richmond that week of November 15th to the 18th. So perhaps we can look at a date then. And I'd have to double check the work plan, but there'll be plenty of opportunities that we can either virtually or in person schedule something more like a workshop style discussion about topics. And maybe that happens once we've done the open houses and we kind of know the issues and the topics that are really on top of people's minds. And then we can bring those to council and say, and that will kind of frame our discussion. But we can have that can be an ongoing discussion as to what works better for council.
Perfect. Sounds good. That's what I was thinking as well. Thanks for that. I'm going to move back to my spot.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. I'm Amanda. So I just had one quick question, I guess, related to our planning advisory committee. Was there an opportunity to engage that group as well, specifically in these discussions? I think it would seem to fall kind of within their purview. Has that been discussed?
So within our proposal, we did include in specific engagement with the planning advisory committees. Again, I'd have to double check the proposal, and if you give me 30 seconds here, maybe I can quickly try to pull this up. But if I
I'm
recall
impressed you could find that
correctly.
in 30 seconds, frankly. Okay, so John was just clarifying that it was definitely part of the RFP that you would meet with the PAC. So that was just something I wanted to get clarified.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and I couldn't meet their second timeline, so.
Yeah, no, okay, that's okay. Thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jason, that's all the questions that the counselors have. And
Awesome.
we just want to thank you for your presentation, and they look forward to engaging with you.
Thank you. If you want to pass my email along to them, so if they have any questions or comments that pop up either in the middle of the night, if they think about planning at 2 a.m., or throughout the next couple of weeks, if they have any questions or comments or
Careful.
topics they want to discuss, they can.
Be careful
give
what
me
you
an
wish
email.
for.
You might not want to do that. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for setting this up, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, so thanks a lot, counselors, for your attention in that discussion and engagement. That's exciting movement on the project, and I think lots of good is going to come out of it. So I'll move us on to the next item on our agenda, which is regarding the West Richmond Education Centre. So a document on, an assessment document basically had been circulated earlier in the month, or no, actually, it's now November 1st, look at that. So in the first couple of weeks of October to councillors for review. It was a lengthy document, and I know we all wanted to take some time to go through it in a little bit more detail before having a discussion, and I think we also all felt that it warranted a special council meeting to kind of be in a position where we can talk about it together and ask questions of staff and all that good stuff. So, so maybe, I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, Chris. I wasn't sure if there was anything you wanted to say about the document to get us started. Go ahead.
I didn't really prepare anything, but I did want to point one thing out that you may or may not have noticed, but on page 4 of the document, there's a little summary table, and as I was reviewing it again today, I noticed that they have 2 of the categories reversed. So you'll notice there's one called architecture exterior, and there's one called structure. Those dollar figures should be swapped. There's nothing under structure, but those dollar amounts should be under category 2. The rest of the document is accurate, but the summary table was incorrect.
Okay, thanks for that.
So the report in general, as you know, during budget deliberations, Council had asked staff to carry out a building condition assessment of the West Richmond Education Centre in order to help Council, I guess, make a decision on the future of the building and what they might want to do with it. So that was passed in March. The audit was conducted, I believe it was August. And we received our final report, I believe, just in early October.
Okay.
So the report identifies, it's a 15 to 25-year capital plan. I guess of particular concern would be what you see coming within the next 1 to 5 years. Keep in mind, some items would be required before the building could be occupied again. Others may be recommended in the near term, but you know, maintenance, there are some things you can defer, there are others you couldn't, so I guess we can discuss that more if you have any questions, but the 1 year or the immediate requirements that they noted were quite substantial. They noted an estimated cost of 1.65 million of year 1 items to be addressed, and within the first 5 years they noted an additional 650,000 for a total of 2.3 million dollars. Of work identified within the near term.
Okay. Okay, so thank you, Chris. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I did want to hear if you had any comments, and thank you for the note about the error in that table as well. That makes sense for sure. So, councillors, do you have any questions or comments on the report? And maybe I'll just kind of go around the room and I'll pick on Councillor Brent Sampson on my left here to get started. Was there anything you wanted to kind of share in terms of your thoughts regarding the report?
Not in particular, just, I mean, it gave us a good overview of, I guess, the finances we'd be looking at, but really, this is to bring it back to basically usage for a school, so there's nothing else we can compare it to, depending on what somebody wants to use it for in the future, although I guess it's unlikely it would ever be returned to a school, but a lot of this would have to be done regardless of whatever use. So I guess we just have to decide where we go from here.
Right, and that's a really great point, Councillor Sampson. You know, the recommended replacements would provide a usable facility in terms of the current building structure. And I think for us to have had an assessment as to what it would cost to do anything different with the building, we would have had to know what that plan was in order for a consultant to be able to provide that information. And so this is very much not that type of comparison assessment. It's just it's a current building assessment. Deputy Warden, was there anything you wanted to point out or discuss on the report?
I mean, I think my reflection on the report was similar to Councillor Brent in that, you know, a lot of the pieces that were discussed that needed to be done were just about bringing the building up to a condition where it could be used. You know, then there were other costs that were related specifically to being used as a school, but when I started to just try to pull those pieces out, it really was not material in terms of the costing. And I don't know that this is not new news. There was an assessment done previously, and it was noted that it was quite a substantial amount of money that needed to be spent to bring it back to its old luster. But I am still happy that we did take the time and the money in the budget to have it done again, because as we talked about before, depending on what we decide to do with it, particularly if we decide to declare it a surplus and put it out for tender, at least, you know, we probably would have to do something like this anyway to be able to assess bids or whatever.
Absolutely.
You know, certainly for me, I don't, if anybody's asking me if I think we should spend this kind of money to bring this building back, I think that we'd have to have a really great plan in terms of what that looks like. I certainly am leaning more towards, allowing community groups and or private investors to take on the project. But I am also very interested in perhaps putting conditions on that so that it is actually returned to some condition that's usable for a lot of reasons, for the community, of course, and also, they're connected to our water and sewer system as well, so it's sort of a customer that's left out there, and then we could share some of the costs there. But certainly I think the community has said that they'd like to see something happen with this school, you know, the community, the district, and the county. And I'm still not sure what that looks like, so I'm happy to have a conversation today with council about that, and I'd just like to have some ideas of, you know, how we could do that, or if that's possible.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Warden. I had, I guess, a quick question just about kind of something that I noted on page 11. And maybe this is, I'm not sure if this would be for you, Dawn, or for Chris, but whoever would like to pipe in can maybe help. It indicates that for the purpose of the report, the following temporal units have been applied, and there's an immediate temporal unit, year 0 to year 1. But in our table that you mentioned earlier, Chris, it really starts with, you know, it doesn't have an immediate time frame. So does that mean there was nothing really immediately that had to be taken care of? And I guess I would assume that's because it's vacant. Is that fair to say?
The year 1 would be inclusive of year 0 as well.
Okay.
But within that category, there would be items that could possibly be deferred, but a good portion, if not the majority, are things that would have to be done before
Anything could be done with it?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that, because that's kind of how I was understanding it. The other question I had was regarding mention of the pea stone gravel. My understanding, I guess this is almost like almost like basically a little bit of information for the public. The report does talk about there being pea stone gravel in the playground area, but my understanding is that there is glass content in the pea stone gravel, and I wouldn't want it to. Pea stone gravel's a great asset, right? And it's an expensive asset, so I just would want to be clear that the fact that there is pea stone gravel there wouldn't necessarily make it usable, user-friendly for uses such as playground or that type of thing. And would that be correct in saying that, do you think?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
worth noting that we're not actually maintaining the playground, so we
Yeah.
can't say what condition it's in, and
Okay.
I would caution anyone to be wary of using it while it's,
Great.
not under the care of the municipality or not being maintained.
Okay. Okay, and that's great, because it does go on to say that the playground equipment itself is in pretty good condition, and fact is, though, that there is that no maintenance going on there, so it would be very risky to be using it, so. So sorry, I kind of jumped in there, I interrupted the flow of traffic. Councillor Sean Sampson, did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, again, just to reiterate what the Deputy Warden and Councillor Brent said, these numbers here, when it comes to a 1-year anticipated, requirement and then a 5-year capital investment, you're talking 1.6, you're talking, another 600,000, you're talking like 2.3 million to get this building going. But again, that's to get it back to the usage of a school, more or less, right? But like the Deputy Warden said, I would be open to having discussions on, looking at tenders and looking at investors. I mean, when you look at a lot of these schools, a lot of them in the province and in our area, some of them have been turned into apartments or low income and stuff like that, right? So I'd be open to discussions to make sure that this building is turned over to someone that's going to invest and make sure that it's used properly in the best interest of Richmond County.
Thanks, Councillor Sampson. Councillor Digdon, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share on that?
Yeah, I guess I would be along the same line when it comes to reading the proposal. I was a little bit deterred, I guess, from what we got. It would have been nice to kind of get a breakdown of the cost repair for heat, the cost repair for glass, the cost repair for, I guess, different services, just to maybe get the building, up and running on a basic, sealed, kind of like winterized and then sealed and then heated. But it didn't seem like we got that. We just got an overall projection of a full cost, unless I read it wrong, but.
The estimates are actually all broken down a little further into the report.
Yeah.
They're broken down, but it doesn't, it just gives you, so, I don't know, if you look at, I was trying to bring it up here, but if you look at heat, it doesn't give you, an estimated cost of.
Oh, you mean the cost to, the consumption of oil or
it doesn't
whatever
give you-
energy it's using, yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that's something we have from previous years, or that's something,
The fueling.
Operational.
operating costs, or just
The
basic.
last year that the school board ran the building, it was about $55,000 for heat and lights. And that would be for, the portion of the year that the school would be operational. I can't tell you how comparable the fuel oil rates were then compared to now, or the power rates. If it's like anything else, prices always go up, but it's a reasonable estimate, I think 50 to 60,000. And then you'd have to look at maintenance of the building as well, so janitorial, snow removal, maintenance agreements for the equipment once it's up and running. So, O&M costs would be another substantial portion that you would probably want to look at in more detail if you were considering operating it.
So is there any way to reach out to them and just get a fundamental cost of up and running? They went over the gym floor, and they went over again, if we were to bring it up to school specs. However, if we were just to bring it up to an open building, is there any way to, I'm sure we're not looking at $2.3 million to fix the glass, fix the heat, and open the building up just to operational.
The report is not to bring it up to what it was as a school. They do note that in the report. Now, there's things that you may choose not to remediate or not to repair based on whatever the use of the building would be. But if we look at some of the key items, the mold remediation is estimated at 150,000, but they say it could swing largely in either direction depending on what a professional would find. Architectural exterior, there's doors and windows, and some of the cladding is over $100,000. They're noting the roof replacement, one was 2021, the other was 2022, and skylight replacement at 475,000. Now, could that be deferred a year, 3 years? Possibly, but it's in the very near term. The interior architecture is almost 400,000. That includes the mold remediation of 150, and the remainder being flooring replacements through much of the building, all of the ceiling tiles replaced, a good deal of painting because there's lead-containing paint in the building, so it has to be encapsulated. On the mechanical side, it's almost 550,000. There's one boiler that needs to be replaced immediately. The other boiler and the water heater are likely in need of replacement. They're well beyond end of life. Partial baseboard heaters are expected to be failed once they try and start up again because they've been drained for such a long period of time. Air handling unit replacements, fuel tank replacement, the pneumatic and control system for the heating, ductwork cleaning before you put it online. I mean, that'll be a substantial cost to do anything with the building. Electrical, they note a few items there, but I don't anticipate that being something that has to be done immediately. Life safety and fire suppression, the fire alarm panel, we were having issues with it a number of years ago, so I expect that has to be replaced. And then on the sprinkler system itself, where the building has been unheated for such a long time, there's likely going to be a number of leaks there. I mean, we have leaks in this building, and this building's not 20 years old, so there's likely a fair bit of cost there with the fire suppression system and also the plumbing. Once you pressurize the system again, you're likely to have a number of leaks that have to be repaired. So there's, even if you exclude things that you feel you can wait for, there's very substantial cost just to get that building to the point where you can occupy it.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. So, so at this stage of the game, I guess what we'd be looking for is, I guess some kind of indication of from council as to next steps with the building. It's been in our ownership since 2013. It's taken quite a long time for us to get here, longer than I think many of us would have liked. But there was issues right down to title, I believe, on the land that had to be settled, and so it wasn't. It was a complicated process to get it to where it's at today. So I've had some people approach me regarding use of the building for the purposes of housing, for the purposes of health-related or multi-purpose type things. I do think there's some potential there, but I think it's up to us, it's up to council to decide how we want to proceed with any potential next steps. Deputy Warden, you mentioned potentially putting some conditions on the building. And you've mentioned that some folks have reached out to you already about it. It is in your district, so I'm sure you're especially hearing about it. And I mean, we can even decide if we would like to have some kind of public consultation related to it as well. So our next steps are really up to us based on what we're hearing as a priority from our communities. And Deputy Warden?
I recall that when we talked about this when we first started, it's 12 months ago, but I'm vaguely recalling that at the time, Don, you had mentioned that there are rules, right, in terms of when we have a property like this, we have to declare it surplus, and then we need, that there are rules around the value that's placed on it, right? So could you just perhaps refresh us on that?
So if it got to the point where we tendered it, we would solely be looking at a value. There would be no other determining factor to divest the property other than value. So if we tendered the property and declared it a surplus, tendered the property, and there were two bids, one was 50, one was 40, we would have to go with the bid of 50, no matter what the intent was for the proposals from each party. And that's, we're solely looking for best value, market value, which would be basically the best bid.
So that's what we've looked for in the past, or that's what we're required to look for? I guess what I'm asking is, I understand what you're saying, and I think that you had mentioned that at that time. But, so I recognize that we've never done that before, sort of put conditions in terms of the bids, right? So if one was 20,000, but it was for affordable housing, and the other was
40,000 and it wasn't for affordable housing, but we wanted to support it, what you're saying is under the terms you're talking about, we'd have to accept the $40,000 bid. But we're also not able to sell the property to a group for $1 because they're doing affordable housing either, right? I think you've talked
Well,
about
that-
that
Oh,
before.
no, we can do
That
that.
we can, there is a section in our land sale policy that provides us an opportunity to, for not-for-profit organizations to request these properties. However, I guess the problem there would be whether or not we would want to do that. And of course, with the huge deficiency in the building, it would be quite a task for any organization, even a for-profit organization, to undertake. So, although it's still totally up to council what they would like to
Yeah, it's
see
within.
happen with the property.
Yeah, so we, within the guidelines of the MGA, we can, when I've seen other municipalities divest properties for, say, $1, something, some nominal type of fee like that. But we can't do that if it's a private sector company, right? That's where we go wrong there, yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm manipulating. I just,
no,
my
absolutely.
brain is, so I understand that we can't do that for a private company. And then I guess the other piece of that is that we're also not allowed to put it up for tender but have conditions. Is that what you're saying? The rules of the tender process are that it has to be based on price alone.
I believe we received some legal advice that that's exactly what was included in the advice. We couldn't put attachments on it to restrict certain people, certain individuals or companies from purchasing the property. It was strictly based on the amount.
And I mean, I think the other part of that equation too is that if we do put it out for tender, it's, my understanding of the tendering process is that when we advertise that, it basically creates it's a bit of an implied contract, and please, Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm remembering from past experiences. So I would caution us against kind of putting something out for tender, I guess, and then not doing something with the tendered bids that we would receive. Don?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that really matters. If we put it up for tender, essentially, the new owner can essentially do what they like with it. It becomes their property.
But if I guess what I was saying is if we received tenders and we weren't satisfied with any of them, are we in a position where we have to act?
I would say that we could get some legal advice on that. However, we do have the right to refuse tenders.
Right, okay. Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments on next steps? I mean, like, I feel pretty, I feel that this is a pretty major asset for the county to be dealing with at this time. My thought process always is when you've got something this major that perhaps we should be consulting in some kind of formalized way with community. I'm not sure that that's the right way to go in this case. I'd be happy to, to hear from councillors on your thoughts on that. I feel that given the work and the pressing priorities related to housing and related to healthcare professional recruitment, at the very least, perhaps we should be consulting with some of those groups, if not just with the public at large, to see if there might be some interest. But that's just where my head goes. I'm not sure if councillors which direction councillors are thinking. So maybe Councillor Brent Sampson, if you wanted to comment. Thank you.
I think, yeah, ideally, low-income housing or some kind of housing to do with the healthcare sector would be great, but to be honest, it's going to be a pretty big price tag one way or another. We're probably just as well off to put a tender out, and as the CAO said, if nothing were to come back that we're satisfied with, I guess if we do have the option and not accept, we could move from there, but I don't know that it'd be in our best interest to overcomplicate it and drag it out too long, only because the longer we do,
Yeah.
likely
That's a good
that
point.
those numbers are only gonna climb, one more winter, and, yeah. It's not gonna get cheaper to fix anyway, so I would think the sooner the better to move on it.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. I know there was a rapid housing initiative that was at 100% capital cost funded, so that's kind of sitting in the back of my brain. I don't know that that's going to be coming back down the pipe, but it might be something we also want to check with our MP, Mike Kellaway, about, to see, what the status of that program is, because to your point, Councillor Brent Sampson, that's a huge price tag for any group, for our municipality, let alone for a nonprofit group, I can imagine. So I guess Deputy Warden, maybe back to you. Would you be in favor of issuing a tender for the building at this stage of the game?
I'm inclined to say yes. Again, that's, given all of the situations and the way it sort of has to be, I would be inclined to say yes with hopes that we will see results that we are looking for. Again, I feel like you do, like Councillor Saint, like everybody does, I'd really like to see this turn into something that has to do with affordable housing or healthcare housing. And, there's definitely been conversations with, the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health Committee. They're thinking about doing something, and it all might work out to the benefit. And at the end of the day, I hate to even suggest it, but it might be for a group like less expensive for them to actually demolish the property and start from scratch, but use the land that's there, and the fact that they have because that's one of the things they said in the report. One of the biggest benefits to this is that the groundwork is done, right? The water and sewer is brought up to the property. There's a lot of parts there that can be used and not require anything. So as much as I think there'd be people who'd be sad to see the building lost, we may find that that's what ends up happening to it. So if we're not stuck to tenders, I think I agree. Delaying this is not going to make it any better. And if we're not able to put conditions on a tender, then if we don't have to necessarily accept the tenders, we should put it out and see what there is out there, and see what the options are.
Right. Okay. Councillor Sean Sampson?
Yeah, so that, I know we're all going around in the same circle here, but again, I don't know if there's a need for a public consultation here or public meetings just to discuss the situation with healthcare, with low-income housing, if there's any groups interested. Like the Deputy Warden said, if you can't put conditions on a tender, then we have the right to refuse the tender if it doesn't suit us, right? So I guess you could say in itself that might be a condition, right? So, yeah, I'd like to see, something happen to it. I mean, when you look at this engineering document, I mean, CMEL did a pretty good job, Chris. I mean, when you look at it,
detailed.
But the one thing that stands out to me, and of course, these numbers are pretty big. They're huge numbers to put it back to where it's usable. But it also states in the report that the structural integrity of the building is in good shape and a good starting point for the repurpose of the building, right? And the replacement cost of this building is $6.4 million, right? So, you hate to see it go, but you'd like to see it used to the best that it could be used for Richmond, right?
Yeah, and you're correct, like Councillor Sampson. It's that first 5 years that they're talking about, especially with the capital plan, it is to bring it up to a certain standard. It's not going to be, to your point, Chris, like a school level,
Right.
Current operational school level, but it is based on not changing any structure in the building, right? So, so there's other options for sure.
And going back to the Deputy Warden's point about the demolition, which, you would hope you wouldn't see, but when you look at the municipality of Argyle, out in Wedgeport, I think they just went through that situation where the old school was going to be transferred to the municipality. And when speaking to their provincial counterparts, it looked like the province was going to step in and demolish that school for the municipality, right? So
Okay.
I don't know, Don, if that's if you heard of that issue or that situation, or maybe something we could look into, right? So.
Might be worth a call to that municipality to see how that went,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
not that I'm eager, like you said, to
Yeah,
demolish
no, you
anything
don't-
for
yeah, you
sure,
don't wanna-
but it just as an
You don't want
option.
to put a wrecking ball to it right away or anything
No.
like that, right? We want to make sure that
That's right.
we do what we can to make sure it's the,
That's
it
right.
stays in the community, but
Yeah.
we gotta weigh up, all our options as well, right? So,
Yeah, and I think we need to be making a really smart decision here, and not to say that emotion doesn't weigh into it a little bit, but we can't guide our decision-making. It's got to be strategic, so. Deputy Warden?
Yeah, and I mean, the other piece that, when we talked about this, at maybe committee of the whole or whatever, when we first talked about this report, that facility condition index, that FCI, is not good, is not favorable. Like, they say it's fair, but
Yeah.
it's 25%. And if you look at the chart, it talks about over time as you spend more. It doesn't get
It's not getting
better.
better.
It gets worse, it just gets worse, because there's like more money to be spent
Right.
versus what it costs to rebuild it from brand new.
Right.
And I think, those are the pieces that I think anybody who's looking to purchase the property are going to look at.
Yeah.
And then really that will be to them to decide what they're going to do, whether they're going to repair what they have there or use it as part of whatever they're doing or not.
That's right. And, if we decide we want to put this out to tender, I mean, there's nothing, certainly that's information I would be taking back to the Housing Coalition and the, Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health, and even potentially the new Community Foundation, Housing for Health fund that's just in its infancy right now. And they may choose to, any combination of those groups may choose to express their interest as well. And there certainly would be nothing stopping them from doing that. So it would be a good catalyst, I think, to your point about getting the ball rolling and not delaying. So, Councillor Digdon, were there any thoughts you wanted to share in addition?
Yeah, there's a couple. I was just reading through a document that was sent to us, or that was done up in 2014 from legal. It's got a couple questions actually related to this school. One of them just states, one of the options is an RFP process, which is completely different, but then it goes on just to say, pursuant to the MGA and the land sale policy, it's a little different process. So it might be something we may want to look into to make sure. It also goes on to make sure that whoever does purchase it, it coincides with the guidelines of our zoning plan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and actually it was Chris who had forwarded that information off to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think I know it's been long overdue, and I would like to possibly do the same. Maybe reach out to some of the organizations to see if it's something that they may be interested in looking at. I wouldn't want to jump the gun tonight on put it up for bid or put it up for tender, and find out that again we're losing a very large piece of our land and another municipal building that I guess just becomes unused or becomes personal property.
Yeah, it's a great point, although I would mention that we're not putting it out for tender. Councillor Digdon doesn't require us to, act on those tenders if we feel they're not in line with, with the prices we would expect to have come back from it, so there's no guarantee. So, and just maybe I'll ask you, Don, like in the context of our, sale and purchase bylaw, I think you mentioned earlier, and I'm just struggling to bring it up here on my computer, but difference between a tendering process and an RFP process, like, is it basically all one and the same in terms of how we've proceeded with that before?
Well, I think that was the reason for that legal advice, because
Right.
our policy does say tender, and
It
there's
just refers to
there's no
tender.
reference to RFP.
Yeah, okay. All right. That was kind of the clarification I was looking for. Thank you. All right, so I'm hearing from a few folks that you'd be interested in starting to tender, the process of tendering the building. Are councillors comfortable making that decision now, or, would we like to delay to do some outreach to community? I'll gonna go around the table and maybe ask for either vote for delay to consult or issue the tender. So, Councillor Brent Sampson?
I was thinking, based on these discussions, the fact that we're not absolutely locked into
Yeah.
accepting any bid, I'd be prepared to make a motion to ask staff to put the building and property up for tender.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the table from Councillor Brent Sampson to put the building and property up for tender. Is there a seconder on that motion? Deputy Warden?
I will second it.
Thank you. So any further discussion? Councillor Sean Sampson?
Yeah, so again, just going back to these public consultations and discussions with these groups, can in the interest of time, can we kill two birds with one stone here? Can we more or less?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'm after here, right? So I agree that we should put it up for tender and move on this as soon as we can. But I'd also like to see some groups have a say as well, right, during the process.
So consult with them
Yeah.
to see if
Yeah.
there's interest and, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So Don, maybe I could ask you a quick question, just in terms of the length of time that a tender would be open for. Could you give us a sense of what generally has been our practice?
I think we've placed them in the local reporter for 3 weeks.
Okay. There's nothing stopping us from making that a little bit of a longer time
No.
period, is there?
Can make it for a month if you like.
Okay. All right, thank you. Councillor Digdon?
Yeah, I guess I would, my only concern would be that, I would hate for people to think we're wasting their time by doing a proposal, going through the footsteps of tendering process, from a business standpoint, just to only for, our interest in determining what somebody's willing to pay for the building. That's my only concern is that, and at that point, what are we showing if everybody sends in a tender and then we decide that we're not accepting any of them? Like, I don't know if we want to take a step back and put it out to the communities or to the people first before we make that step for the tender, or do we just want to? I guess my only concern is that we put it out there and then we're not looking to accept it. We're more or less just looking to see what somebody else wants to pay for it.
Right, okay, and that's a great point. I mean, if we're going to be tendering it, we need to be doing that seriously, I think is what you're saying, right, yeah. Okay, Councillor Brent Sampson?
Yeah, and I would hope we would be as well. I just figure it gives us the option if we really don't like what comes back. It would be great to see a community group take it over, but I'm just looking at these costs. When you're looking 2.3 million in the next 5 years, I think if any of them can come up with that, then they'll probably be fine to put a tender in. You know what I mean? Like if they're not able to come up with the funding now in order to put a reasonable tender in, I think it's probably going to be really difficult to come up with 2.3 million over the next few years. It's not, it doesn't sound great, but I think it's probably where we're at. But I'd be very much in favor of having it for, 1 month instead of the minimum 3 weeks, just to give a little longer.
Or 2 months, or 6 weeks, or what, you know what I mean? It's entirely up to us, based on what I'm hearing from you, Don. We can determine the length of time. I mean, we don't want to make it unreasonable, you know what I mean? But, yeah, okay. Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Deputy Warden?
And I do, Councillor Digdon, I understand where you're coming from in terms of, who's going to want to put in the time to gather up the numbers to give us a bid if they don't think we're going to accept it. But again, I think that as long as our request, specifically talks about the fact that we would like to know what their plan is, because I think that's going to be paramount to the decision making. Because if it's just about the number, then we're still not going to have any idea what we're deciding on. What, if none of them look good to us, well, if they're just numbers, we can't tell if they look good to us. Maybe the name of the company might get, or the group might give us an indication, but we're going to need to have something in the proposal that's, again, not necessarily, that's not part of the decision making per se, but underlying it is. And I think that if people start, if anybody's bidding on this property, they know that they've likely checked in with someone to find out what our goal is here. Right? And
Right.
I think we've made, as a council, we've all said the same thing. We would prefer to see affordable housing, something that's related to either, health housing or health services / housing or whatever.
Right.
So I don't think we've hidden our agenda in terms of what we want to see happen there.
Certainly not, no.
No,
That's
so,
right.
although we can't say it directly we can't say we will make a decision based on that.
Yeah.
We can reject based on it not being what we're looking for.
Right, and certainly in terms of the cost,
Right.
if we just don't feel that's coming back where it needs to be.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Digdon?
Yeah, so again, I just, you know, I'm gonna go with luckily fell on the email from Chris, and maybe everybody should probably take a look at it when you get a chance. It was in November 17th of 2020. And the document clearly states that we actually we can't ask what somebody else is looking to do with that property. Our function as council is to, and to be frank, it just says more or less get the best bang for the buck.
Yeah.
It's not what, you know, whether somebody's putting in a bicycle shop or, you know, a Harley Davidson club isn't up to us to decide. And so again, I would just be cautious in making this motion tonight to put it out for tender. I think we, at the minimum, we should probably take a couple weeks to send it out to the people that we think may be looking at, that may be able to run with it or take advantage of it, that we would like to see take over. Other than that, then by putting it up for tender, I think we're opening a can of worms if we try to look in, you know, again, we can't pick and choose what somebody else is going to do with the building, nor do we have the right to ask them,
Okay,
according to this document.
okay. Thank you, Counselor. So I don't know, Deputy Warden, if that changes your, yeah.
Chris, do you want to weigh in on that, Chris, or is that correct, or?
Chris?
The opinion from the solicitor essentially was if we put it out for tender or for quotations, it's for best price, and we shouldn't weigh any other criteria such as benefit to the community or any other criteria in that. And I would caution council against even asking what they plan on doing because it may taint your perception of the bids. And I will also add, as far as rejecting the tenders, if we tender it and we get bids that are at market or better, I'm not sure that council could choose not to accept it. So I think you should get a legal opinion if you think you may want to consider rejecting it if we're getting market value, just to make sure we don't get caught. You know.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Deputy Warden?
That definitely does change my opinion for sure, because, you know, I understood that we couldn't we couldn't expressly say that, but, you know, thanks to the comments of both Councillor Digdon and Chris, whether I need to remove my seconding of the motion or whether I'll just vote no for it, either way, I do think that we need to take a bit of sober second thought on that. And then to me, we need to go to these groups and we need to ensure that there's no groups that are able and interested to do something with the property before we put it out to the highest bidder. I don't think that we want to drag that on a really long time, right? So I think that by doing some public consultation, by having those conversations, we can determine whether or not we're kind of holding this whole conversation truly for groups that don't have the means to do it, or you know what I mean, or have the
Right.
ability to get the means to do it.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then they'll need to understand that we need to move forward, because I think we do need to have something happen with this property.
Right, so it's not, I guess the point you're making, if I'm understanding correctly, is it's not just really about desire to want to do something with the building, it's about capacity to do something. Okay. All right, thank you. Don? Yeah?
So that whole idea about going out to the communities, I'm not even sure if we're able to do that. I think if we want to move in that direction, we should consult with our solicitor to see if that's something that we are able to do. If it does in fact create any kind of a liability on our part, if that does happen and we end up choosing someone that perhaps may want to pursue a project. So I just think we maybe a bit of legal advice on that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to getting any kind of legal opinion on that, but I mean, the reality is that municipalities divest assets to community groups all the time, and that doesn't happen without consultation. So we do currently have a motion on the table to issue the tender, sooner rather than later, so we will have to vote on that. But certainly the other option is to delay that tendering, get, by a month while or indefinitely until such time as we're satisfied that there's not a specific option that would address the priorities of council. So, so is there further discussion on this particular motion? Would folks like to vote on it at this stage of the game, or have changed their mind? Or I think we would have to vote on it. You can't withdraw a second of the it would just need to pass or fail. Correct? Yeah. Okay. So it was seconded. Yeah. 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 Okay. So are people ready to vote on that particular motion? Councillor Digdon?
Yeah, I'm in no.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So right. I think
Go with the all in favor first.
I think Councillor Digdon was calling for the question. So all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Okay. Those opposed? Nay. Okay, so the motion has not passed. So I guess next point of discussion on this would be, Councillor Digdon, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know, if we want a motion to proceed to, I guess, get some legal advice if we can speak with, or,
Yeah, Dawn, would you probably want a motion?
or I don't
for
know if we
that?
need a motion for it, or if you just something, maybe we can take a look at the document that was sent back in 2014, if there's no changes, that may already cover the legal doc. I know I couldn't get through it all while I was,
Right.
but maybe Dawn, if you have time, you can.
I don't think that there's anything in there that allows us to go ahead and consult with not-for-profits to, Chris, you can help me on that one? I don't think there's anything in there. They don't make reference to that at all.
They do for not-for-profit. There was a group, again, I didn't.
Yeah, I think the group would have to approach us. I just question on whether or not we, it's okay for us to approach groups.
So I think then, our happy medium there it would be to maybe, put it out to groups with an interest in, in health and housing, that the county is looking at tendering, and that should they want to approach us, to consult on it, then the door is open to do so. And, because I think, we don't want to set an expectation also in the community that this is absolutely the direction we're going in, because it really does boil down to, capacity issues at the community level in terms of being able to do anything with this. So, so councillors, if you're okay with it, we could table this discussion until, the tendering discussion until next month, and come back to it. I would really caution, though, on letting too much time elapse before we come back to this. I'm not trying to rush it unduly, but I think I can see nodding heads, so I think we're all on the same page about that. So, so I think maybe this would be our window of opportunity to let the community know that, and I mean, community does know this is a public meeting, that we're starting to discuss a tendering process, and should anyone wish to consult with us, we're open to doing that.
Just one suggestion I would make, if you are going to entertain nonprofit groups, maybe post to that effect, just so that they're all getting the information. If we
Yeah.
only contact certain ones, we may be accused of unfair practices, so.
That's certainly
And it could be
true.
simple, it could be, the reporter of the website, something like
Yeah.
that, but just to, to be open and transparent, I guess, with all the groups.
That's a
'cause
great
We don't know
idea.
who's out there.
You're right. Thanks, Chris. That's a really great idea. Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what I was thinking. Should we make a plan in this case then to advertise it, let's say in the Reporter, but that we plan on discussing it at whatever the future date may be, but maybe
Yeah.
decide tonight what the future date is, because I'd rather not leave this kind of thing indefinitely. I think it's better off to move on it sooner than later, whatever direction we go. So,
So our next committee of the whole is December 6th. Sorry, November 8th, but that's sorry, you're right, it is November 8th, but I was thinking a week's probably not enough
yeah,
time
that's
for
a
us to
short
do
time
that.
frame. But what about,
Yeah, so if
What-
we
what about-
looked at December 6th maybe, to be,
What-
have that as an agenda item on our committee of the whole, does that make sense?
maybe, but would that would end up having to come back to a regular council meeting again anyhow?
Yeah.
So would it be just as well to put it right to a regular council meeting? Or
Yeah,
in
either
that
either
case?
way is
Just so
good.
we've had discussion about it, and
Yeah.
but November, yeah, maybe would that be too short a time frame? or
Well, I'm
five
just a little worried
Yeah,
that it
but-
might be, but.
Well, it'd be about 3 weeks, I guess, from tonight, right?
1, 2, 3, yeah. It'd be 3 weeks.
I think we're done. Yeah, I think we're pushing the envelope to have it in November, 3 weeks. It's fine for us to get it out there, but then the groups still have to get together and make sure that it's something they can, justify doing or even be able to do. And 3 weeks is a pretty short time frame for people to get together, meet, and make sure they can have the appropriate funding. I would recommend, like you said the first time, maybe the beginning of December, and which would lead us to what, like December?
So our next committee, or our next regular council meeting after November, if we didn't do the November one, which is 3 weeks away, would be December 20th. That's our next regular council meeting.
Right.
So you're suggesting give it till then?
Yeah, well, personally, it's been sitting there for over how many years now? 7? I don't think 1 month or 1 month and a half is going to make or break the decision-making process.
Yeah.
But it will, make it fair for people out there to,
And it is in line with the 6 weeks we were thinking of the tendering process, right? So from now till the 28th, you're looking at 6-7 weeks. I mean, that's not unreasonable. And like Brent said, it goes to regular council, right? So instead of COW on the 6th, we go to regular council on the 20th. That should give us the 6 or 7 weeks we need to see what the interest is.
Okay. So the suggestion is then to defer the discussion until December 20th, and to publicly advertise that will be an agenda item on the December 20th meeting. Sorry. Yep, that's good. Okay. So perhaps we do need a motion, though, to ask staff to publicly advertise that, I mean, it's anyway, I would feel better if we had a motion on the table to publicly advertise that the West Richmond Education Center, building condition assessment will be back on our agenda on December 20th. Councillor Digdon?
yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a seconder on that motion? Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion on that item? So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so that motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. I think that's a really great discussion. And I would also like to thank Chris and any other staff members who were supporting this assessment. This is extremely thorough. And actually, I'm wondering if we could maybe pop this document up on our websites or somewhere for people to have access to. It's an extremely well done assessment, in my mind. Of course, not being in the construction trade, maybe that's a bad assessment, but it looks pretty good to me. So thank you for your effort on that, Deputy Warden.
And I would suggest, especially where we're putting it out to the public to say we're going to talk about it again and basically make a decision on the direction we're going to follow by the 20th. It would be really useful for any
To link
groups
this,
who may be
yeah.
like hoping that we put it up for tender, or a community group or whatever that plans to, that they would see the condition
Yeah.
of the building and the
Yeah.
dollar value to get it to spec.
It would make sense to link this in the advertisement, yeah. Okay, that's great. Councillor Brent?
Yeah, exactly that. Any group, I think, that wants to look at it seriously needs to have access to this
Yeah.
document in order to make that decision.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Digdon?
Yeah, I'm just gonna make one last comment on this, and I recommend that the councillors before December 20th really go back and look at the information. And obviously, I only skimmed over tonight, but go back and look at the documentation from November 17th, 2020 from Chris. It actually gives us the breakdown, and it gives us the municipality of the County of Richmond, the policy on that. So it might be something that we want to just make sure that we get it covered before we move on.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Okay. All right. So that basically concludes the main items on our agenda this evening. Thank you again to Chris and your team for taking care of that. Just really appreciate it. And, sorry, we have Councillor Brent with a comment.
You can finish your comment. That's
Oh,
fine.
yeah, no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna make a motion to move in camera.
That's great.
All right.
Perfect timing. We have a motion to move us in camera. Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that
Councillor
motion.
Digdon? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Thanks very much. We'll take a quick break to this point if there are councillors who would like to make a motion. Councillor Brant Sampson.
I move that the municipality move forward with the legal matter as discussed in camera.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Thank you, Councillor Brent. Could I have a seconder? Deputy Warden?
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Warden, any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. And now I'll accept a motion to adjourn the meeting. Oh, Councillor Sampson?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Other Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.